Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today we're talking once again about DIY NAS motherboards, and today I want to talk about what is possibly, at least in my opinion, one of the very best value 10 GBE DIY NAS solutions I've seen out there. This board here, it has got 10 GBE, it has got a pre-installed mobile SoC processor, it has a very low TDP, it has got M2 NVMe, it's got 6 SATA ports there, it's ITX for that compact, I know it's not for everyone, nature, and it's rocking out the gate at quite an affordable price point. This is the MW-N305-NAS motherboard, an ITX Mobo that can either be purchased with just the motherboard and CPU for about $243 at the time of recording, but you can also get it with a section of memory, an 8 gig DDR5 memory SODIMM module there, and 128 gig SSD for $284 there. Now, it may seem pretty familiar. That's because around about a month ago, I was looking at this. This is the exact same motherboard, but this one is an N100. This is the new one. From both of these, same Topton board there, ITX through and through, and both of them arrive with that Alder Lake processor, but with an N100 quad-core in here and an N305 i3 8-core processor inside here. Now, that processor, let's get the old one out of the way. This processor here, 8-core, 8-thread, has got integrated graphics on board. And we have a single SODIMM slot there at the top that allows us to attach, again, up to a single 32 gig module. I didn't test higher than that because I didn't have it in DDR5. I will also highlight it is non-ECC. I know there's going to be some of you that are going to be quick to say that DDR5 has ECC. It technically does, but it's on die. ECC is not the same as ECC, the way it does the correction all the way through, and die-hard, particularly flash users, do care for the difference there. So the lack of ECC is going to bother some users. But I will say that CPU still has a phenomenally low TDP power utilization there. When we tested it, and you're going to hear more about the results of those tests later on, but in pure idle utilization, we had the device just rated at 27 to 28 watts, and that was with 6 drives connected but in complete hibernation, and 2 SSDs connected doing nothing. Next up came power consumption utilizing just the SSDs there. We had the CPU sitting around 30 to 50% utilization with heavy simultaneous read and write operations on both of the SSDs, but with all the hard drives connected in hibernation. That's when we saw power consumption of around 34 to 35 watts. Finally, when we had both of the SSDs being accessed and all 6 hard drives in a RAID 5 environment over 10 GBE, we saw utilization of around 64 to 66 watts in terms of power consumption there. So again, yes, it got high, but that was during full read-write operations happening to the hard drives in a RAID 5 environment over 10 GBE externally, and heavy simultaneous 50 constant 1 gig read-write and transfer testing across all of the disks. Once you factor in all of that going on an i3, 60 odd watts is pretty darn good. Digging down ever so slightly onto those individual SATAs there, we're not using an SFF fan out to save space. These are traditional SATA outputs there, all 6 of them. And we saw performance numbers there when we had a mixture of 4 and 6 TB drives that I'd left in the studio already together. And when we had those set up on here, we saw read and write performance numbers of 495 over 350 to around 380 megabytes per second there. Now, that was fair and well. You're probably thinking, oh, what if I slammed in some SSDs there? I didn't have 6 SSDs of a decent enough SATA parity between all of them to actually do that test. But also, I dug down into the PCIe lanes of this, and it's taken advantage of the SATA JMB58X controller for those individual SATAs there. But it's on a Gen 3 times 1 lane, which is only going to afford a maximum bandwidth of around 800 to 1,000 megabytes per second anyway. So do keep in mind that although we've got the 6 ports there, we're never going to exceed more than 10 GBE on the external connection, and moreover, I don't think that controller is going to allow us to max out that channel anyway. But nevertheless, reasonable numbers I saw in terms of those RAID 5 hard drives together. But what about the SSDs? Now, once again, digging into the back end of this using Unraid via terminal, we're able to ascertain that each of the M2 NVMe slots this has, 2 of them at 2280 lengths, are Gen 3 times 1. We had a couple of Gen 4 SSDs in both of them just to really max things out, but they're of course downgraded to their default 3 times 1, which again gives us around 800 to 1000 megabytes per second to play with in terms of bandwidth each. Repeated read performance of a 1 gig test file there came in at 783 megabytes per second in terms of read, and that was the peak number, although it did fluctuate. In terms of write, we did see it dip ever so slightly, and although it was a little bit varied, it sat around 655 to 690 megabytes per second. Now, when we tried to transfer data repeatedly between both of the drives, we saw in terms of up and down between 300 and 500 to 550 megabytes per second performance there. Again, given the 3x1 bandwidth afforded to both of those, it was pretty much what we expected there. It was never going to be the same channel going out, but nevertheless, for what you're getting on a more modest scope here, balancing between the M2 NVMe's and the SATA hard drive ports there, or maybe your SSDs if you're feeling flush, that's not too shabby. Now, in terms of ports and connections on this board, I've got mostly good news for you there. Internally, and inside the board, we've got a couple of USB 2 ports there that can be used for a boot drive, perhaps if you're using Unraid to load that into the memory, that might be advantageous. But the main ports there on the rear comprise of several more USB ports, one of which we'll talk about in a little bit. We've got some HDMI 4K 60 frames per second output, but we've also got 2 times 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports there and a 10G copper port now. That utilizes an Aquantia AQC113C controller. We dug in to find that out via that terminal command there, and that's a decent enough controller there on board to deal with the 10 GB output, and it's on a 3x2 lane as well, so no throttling whatsoever internally. And when we did our 10G testing, it was still pretty reasonable, and it was fully saturated by doing an output there of one of the M2 NVMe's as well. But one thing that did kind of rattle my cage a little bit when it came to the outputs on this device is the USB-C. According to the specifications, this USB here is a 20 gigabits per second USB output. I tested a Thunderbolt 4 and a USB 4 drive. I tested a USB 3.2 Gen 2 X2 drive from Samsung. I tested an M2 NVMe and an external USB 4 enclosure. I never got that port out of 1 gigabyte per second there, not 1000 megabyte, nothing higher than that I ever got from there. Now, I don't know whether it was something I was missing via the BIOS. I dug in deep into the BIOS. I went through every single sodding, chuffing option I could find, and at no point could I find the configurable value for that USB. So I don't know if there's something I'm missing, or something maybe the USB drivers that I was taking advantage of in Unraid, but I was not able to get that USB to hit the 20 gigabit that it was promoting there. Last thing, there is a micro SD card slot there to load in. Again, perhaps use that for a recovery drive. It's an unusual thing. I commented it when we were talking about the N100. It's not bad, it's just unusual, and I'm kind of wondering what that would be used for in the grand scheme of things. And that's really it. In terms of value, it's very hard to fault this. It's 284 Nicker if you want the hard drives and the SSD and the memory included, 240 or so if you just want it bare bones. It's 10 GBE ready. It's 2 M2 NVMe's. It's got 6 physical SATA ports, and for MITX with a very low profile fan there mounted on top of that little SoC controller there, mobile SoC controller. You know, I can't really fault this. I'm not going to say it's going to break the world in terms of performance. It simply isn't. That N305 inside, with its very modest number of lanes afforded to it and its high priority towards low clock sub 1 gigahertz when boot. You have to clock it up to 3 if you want it, but it only starts at 0.8 to 1 gigahertz generally at any given time. So it is designed to be efficient. It is designed for a low impact set up and forget NAS server, and hence why I think at its price point and what it's affording to you if you go for it, it's a decent little NAS motherboard. But just keep your expectations just a wee bit realistic when looking at something like this. Do you want to learn more? Well, we hopefully are doing some comparisons soon between this and the N100 board there, just to see what the difference is, because the price difference between them is around $80 to $90 depending on where you buy in the world, and frankly that's not a lot of money, and I think in most cases I just opt for this one anyway. But we want to dig more into it just to see what extra this brings to the table, given it has exactly the same M2 NVMe PCIe assignment of slots, of lanes I should say, both across other controller parts across the whole system. It really is just a peak clock speed and more cores to play with for $80 to $100. But We'll find out more in the comparison. If you do want to get hold of one of these, they are linked in the description below. We've got a whole written review in progress. We've already finished the N100 version, and the N305 should be with us any day now. But apart from that, thank you for watching. Again, links below. Use them. It results in a small commission to myself and Eddie here at NAS Compares. It's just us doing what we do, and it really helps us out. But don't use those links unless you found the video helpful and you were going to go to those shops anyway. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.